Okay, hello everyone. I am doing Graphlab. My name is Daniel Wheat, and this is a technical explanation. Myself and Andrew will be covering the toolkits of Graphlab, what it is, how to run it, and everything else. To start with, I'll cover an introduction, followed by a look into the Graphlab toolkits. These include the Graphlab Analytics, Clustering, and Computer Vision software. Following this, I'll be covering coding in Graphlab, and then a conclusion. Andrew will carry on with the other toolkits afterwards. Graphlab is a high-level graph parallel abstraction software. Computation is performed through distributed data graphs expressed as vertex programs, which are executed in parallel on each vertex. Vertices can only signal neighboring vertex programs, effectively constraining computation to a defined graph structure. So as you can see here we have 4 nodes, each one has a link. Computation will run on each node and follow the links appropriately based on what it's running. But using this graph-like data structure, we can do graph theory computation and solve graph-like problems. The Graphlab software package provides a large-scale and distributive system design. Alright, so Graphlab provides a core C++ API and a collection of learning and data mining toolkits. As you can see here, we have the Linux cluster services, which branches into MPI, TCP, pthreads, Hadoop, whatever this stuff is. And Graphlab sits in the middle layer here. Graphlab also has a series of toolkits, or has a toolkit with a series of tools that we can use for data mining and learning functions. Each Graphlab process is multi-threaded with MPI to utilize multi-core clusters available today. Now the Graphlab toolkits cover a wide range of machine learning algorithms. The toolkits that I will cover are Graph Analytics, which includes triangular counting, the PageRank algorithms, and K-core decomposition. Following this is clustering, which only uses the K-means++ algorithm and spectral clustering. And after this, I'll look at computer vision, which is sort of an abstraction layer for OpenCV, but distributed. The current functionality in Graphlab is panoramic image stitching. Graph Analytics software provides a means for the analysis of graph structures and the extraction of patterns from these graphs. The first tool is a graph format conversion. Graphlab handles graphs in different file formats, so you can have a binary format or just a series of numbers all across lines specifying nodes and their links to other nodes. To run the format converter, you just use the following command here. You specify an input graph, the format of this input graph, and you specify the output graph and the format of that. All the toolkits can be found in the Graphlab toolkit under debug or release. Why are you smiling?
So I want to ask you a question right now.
Yeah?
What are the different file formats and graph file formats that Graphlab uses?
Well, you can find a detailed explanation of all the file formats in the Graphlab API. It's very helpful, covers everything, and explains how to actually write them yourself and implement them in each toolkit. To run in parallel, you can use MPI run, specifying the number of processes, and then again the actual code with an input graph and formats.
So do the different tools require different formats, or can they take a variety of formats?
From what I've seen, it's generalized across the whole thing. You can use any of the Graphlab formats in any tool. However, if you do need to convert one graph to another, this toolkit will just do it for you, this tool. So it's a good utility. Cool. Next is triangular counting. Some graph-like structures can be triangular in nature. So you can have 2 nodes accessing one, you can have 1 node accessing 2, or you can have a cycle where one references another in a circle. You can follow and count out these structures to get an idea of the actual structure of a graph. And that's pretty much what this tool provides. It also allows us to do undirected and directed triangle counting, which is counting, directed counting will follow the links. count the total number of links and the expansive size of this graph, whereas undirected triangle counting will give an overall view of the triangular nature. The PageRank algorithm is an algorithm originally used by the Google search engine. Web pages are assigned a rank based on the number of web pages that they link to. In Graphlab, vertices represent web pages and edges represent hyperlinks, giving us a good data to work with. So here we've got a diagram. It's of an imaginary website compilation. Take a wiki. You can see here that B has a series of inputs and links referring to it and another, and hence its priority is quite large, as you can see. Can you read that yet? They're small, but it's got 38.4% PageRank value. It's pretty much a probability distribution algorithm, determining the likelihood of a person arriving on a certain page if they just randomly went through random web pages on the sites. So that web pages with more pages linking to it would have a higher priority. So you can identify those sort of central sites that everything orientates and works around and prioritize them.
So then why does C have such a large priority?
Because B's got a high priority.
C directly only links to B, and B's got a massive value. Each node or web page inherits a certain amount of the rank from another one, of adjacent ones. So they assess their neighbouring vertices, throw across their values. A good explanation for the page rank of each page, in particular the actual algorithm process again, is in the docs. But this little algorithm here effectively sums up the ranking of each. To run, you can just do run PageRank. I think we've had some issues with the types of graphs it can accept or something. Andrew?
Yeah, some kind of passing error.
Yeah, alright, so we're still working that out. I've actually taken to writing my own. But yeah, as long as you understand what's happening. K-core decomposition. In graph theory, a K-degenerate graph is an undirected graph in which every subgraph has a vertex of degree at most K. If you don't understand that, it's essentially identifying a hierarchical order in which the vertices of a graph in which the discovery of central components can be found. So if you have these central nodes that refer to everything else, you can refer to them as being the central. It iteratively iterates over all the cores, over all the nodes to find the K-core of a network. So just more mathematical graph functions. To run it, you run K-core, you specify the graph, and then the format that it's taking in. So yeah, as you can see, your previous question, you just specify the format that's taking in. Additional functions of the graph analytics toolkit include graph coloring, which colors individual vertices or nodes in a graph based on their weighting, and make sure that no two nodes actually have the same color at once. So you see slight variances. If you have a massive node, it'll be colored, say, blue, then all the ones adjacent to it will be slight shades of blue but changed in a certain manner. So it's just coloring a graph, give you a better idea, visualization of what it looks like. Connected components counts the amount and size of connected components in a graph. So this, the initial node branches into two large sections, or it just is more analytics. The approximate diameter works out the diameter of a graph, not much to say. And graph
What is the
addition.
diameter of a graph?
It doesn't work out the exact diameter, it's an
What is it?
approximation.
What does it mean?
So the size, like of a graph. If you have how do I explain this? If you have
The longest chain of connections, maybe.
yeah, so it takes more of an area into effect as well. So graphs can branch out multiple times. So it gets sort of like the average of the longest length. Yeah.
Okay.
And graph partitioning splits up a graph using normalized cuts. Clustering is method of grouping a set of objects so that each group contains similar objects. Clustering is a general task that can be solved, and Graphlab provides two algorithms that can be used for clustering. This is k-means and spectral clustering. Both take a collection of files in which each line is treated as a data point in 5-dimensional space. So we could have 3-dimensional coordinates and 2 values for each, or 5-dimensional actual coordinates. Graphlab's pretty nifty with this. It provides a synthetic data generator to actually generate sample data sets that we can then use for clustering. I'm not sure if we would actually be presented this problem when the actual competition, but it's something that's quite relevant. K-means is an expansion upon the traditional K-means algorithm, in which it randomly chooses K items and makes them as initial centroids for each point, and then finds the nearest centroid and assigns the point to the cluster associated with the nearest centroid. So easier visual explanation down below. You see the red points represent center cluster cores. You specify these cores with the initial data file. It then finds the points closest based on a weighted means, and then assigns them to this cluster core. Now these cluster cores can actually shift and move based on which ones they find and averaging. So repeating iteratively over this results in unique clusters being identified. Repeat steps 2 and 3 to at no point it switches clusters. No point switches clusters, and then we have our actual clusters specified. Typically the new centroid will be the average of all points in the cluster. So, do you understand that, or do I need more visual?
So it's basically just finding groups of
the center.
groups of dots.
Yeah, it's clustering them together, right? K-means is pretty simple because it's just the average across all points it finds based on Euclidean distance.
But that doesn't handle like a
Yes,
line.
it doesn't. It doesn't. If you had similarities, say in an arc of points, and say they both were adjacent to each other, sort of like a 2 bananas, I guess, one on top of the other shape. How does it cluster that then when it's using the distance? It could find one cluster in the middle that encompasses both, or it could find 2 on the sides that encompasses all of them. So it's not so good when checking for similarities in terms of
It's not good for
connectivity.
patterns.
Yeah,
Maybe
patterns.
only good for like circle shapes.
If you gave it a checkerboard, you can imagine that each actual square would be a cluster.
Right, I understand, yeah.
So to deal with this, we can use spectral clustering, which looks for the connectivity between data points. As you can see here, as a little example, it's found 2 unique clusters based on how close they are to each other, the red and blue. There's more on that on the docs, but not much to talk about there. Now, on from graph analytics to clustering to computer vision, which provides distributed wrappers for the algorithms of OpenCV. Unfortunately, they've only implemented one, which is panoramic image stitching. It grabs a collection of composite of images and then forms a composite panoramic image. As you can see on this picture, it's pretty self-explanatory. I highly doubt we would have something like this in the actual competition, but it's good to know. And yeah, there's more on the docs. Now I'm just going to briefly cover how to code in Graphlab. A simple example, because there's 2 ways we could use the actual toolkits with data sets that we're given, or we would actually have to write our own, something ourselves to use Graphlab and the API. So custom Graphlab projects are all specified by making a subdirectory in the Graphlab API/apps. This subdirectory will record whatever your project is, and the maker will actually look for it when you go over it. So for example, we can say Graphlab API apps, my first app. Inside this directory, we'll create a cmakelist.txt file with the following contents. Project, my project. My project is the unique identifier for your project. you need to make sure that this doesn't clash with any of the other previous toolkits. So you don't want to write spectral clustering, because that will be reserved and you get an error. Below this, you add Graphlab executable, and here you specify your actual C code and the project that belongs to it. For multiple CPP files, just append the file names into the command. So my first app would have tools.cpp and stuff.cpp. Now we can begin coding. Here's a hello world example for Graphlab. Something very simple, but if you want to go more extensive, I suggest you go to the docs. But to start with, you include, this is C++ format, you include graphlab.hvp, that includes the whole Graphlab API core, and you can just specify that you're using the namespace of Graphlab. We initialize it with the arguments that the function takes, pretty self-explanatory. Now, distributed control is a method for controlling Graphlab's input-output. There's lots of functions that come under this, but we're only interested in cout, which is a handler for the original cout function. But if we're running a Graphlab tool or program in parallel, if we said just C format, cout, so hello world, and then we ran it across 4 processes, 4 nodes, then we'll get 4 hello worlds or 4 whatever the output was. So the distributed control is sort of an overhead for handling all your other nodes. It would only print hello world once if we run it across multiple cores.
So DC is like the master.
Yeah, it's the
Like
controller
so,
for Graphlab, right? Yeah. And then MPI tools finalize, just finalizes the Graphlab and actually performs all its execution after you queued it up. You can run this in the debug or release, and it will build your project just by navigating to the folder that would have been created, and then running make. MPI run, I believe that is, not execute. The number of processes or nodes, and then the name of your unique project. The output of the program, hello world. Now if we just use the C++ cout, it'll be 4 hello worlds. So more information can be found at docs.graphlab.org/unix. And that's an example. Did you have any questions about that? Simple hello world.
Well, I guess so. What if you wanted to print out 4 hello worlds?
Yeah, you can say, you know,
They-
I process
You
1,
just
I
do
process 2.
cout, or you
Yeah, you could. I believe you can also specify particular nodes when they come across them. So you can say, when I'm on this one, I output this as opposed to this. And DC has its own functions and stuff like that. It's quite an elaborate API. There's a lot of things in it.
Okay.
Also, when you're writing a program in Graphlab, you inherit the classes of the vertex structure and the edge structure, and you can actually choose to fill them with content yourself, defining how they behave when you actually run the program. So for PageRank, you would have, you know, a weight for every vertex, and the edges would resemble links to another vertex. And then when you actually compute it, go ahead and do your problem.
Yeah, but with the 4 hello worlds, for instance, do they fight each other for standard out, or do they get locked?
It's based on the order of execution.
Yeah,
You know,
okay.
it is a graph structure.
Yeah, yeah.
It'll go from one to the next.
So you don't get them fighting for output or anything like that.
No, it
Yeah.
should, underneath it, should.
Yeah.
Alright. Cool. Any other questions?
I have plenty of questions, but I'll wait for everyone else first.
I was gonna say, like, you spoke about, what was the earlier slides? You could go back like a couple of slides and I'll tell you which
Go
one
back.
the question, yeah.
Easy to say, hard to
Oh,
do.
sorry, yeah, you can't go back really, can you?
2 fingers, push down.
Oh yeah, 2 fingers and slide, I think.
And it has momentum, so you can flick it.
Alright, flick.
No, you need to have your mouse over the page so it knows where you're contextually trying to scroll. And then
2 fingers, yeah.
don't
Slow.
click, just caress
There
it.
you go.
Caress it.
Alright.
Alright, there you go.
Yep.
Okay,
Which
so
slide
go
are you
down a bit.
It's just like using a tablet, like if you were to
Just space.
Yeah, pretty much. keep going down.
Do you
I don't
remember
know
the
if it
name?
was- I don't know if it was.
Page rank.
Might
Like
be
you're
core
actually pushing an
decomposition.
object to
Oh,
like a
okay,
really
core
Girls are caught up on the whole,
lubricated
whole
surface.
But like what you spoke briefly about it, but I didn't get like what problem would you be trying to solve if
Alright,
they
so
gave
if-
you something?
If you had a large data set and you were told that there's a parental group of nodes inside this graph structure, this graph structure is, you know, it's massive. It has all these links can refer to giant bits. You want to know where the actual core is, say like the central hub of a network,
Yeah.
represented as a graph. Running K-core decomposition over it will identify the central nodes, which link to everything else.
Is that actually in the center of it, or is that, can it be like, because that one there looks like the center's in the middle of the data, right?
Yeah, but I think
That's a visualization.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what they're trying to show there though.
Okay.
It looks pretty.
from what I'm gathering, could you use that for say like a chess algorithm?
Chess.
Yeah.
So you could find
Because
out
it's
the central
hierarchical,
move.
right?
Yeah.
So you start with your parent node as the initial board state, and then you've got
So any sort of
move
tree
one.
structure.
There's probably what 8 plus 2, so there'd be 16 plus, so there'd be 18. K would be
Cool,
18
I think
initially,
that
and
chess
it'll
would
keep
probably-
going. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Step
Like
by
the
I
possible
can
moves.
understand, but I'm not
If you
quite
had,
sure
like-
if it applies directly to that
So if
case.
you,
There might be a
so
better.
you're saying if you mapped every possible move combination to a graph
Yeah, and they're hierarchical.
and hierarchy, it would find the first
Yeah.
sort of combination, or where it started basically.
It would find the core.
The core of it,
Yeah. So if they all branch from one point,
yeah.
which in chess I believe you know where you're at to start
Yeah.
with. So. I
Oh,
can't
so it's
see
trying to
why
find
you-
where it all starts, is that what it's trying to do?
Not where it starts, just the core.
Yeah, but is that the core though?
The most K number of nodes in
Yeah.
the core.
So do you feed it a bunch of nodes, and then it works out a call
You
for
feed
that?
an entire graph.
Oh, and it
You
works
provide
out.
the graph and the format it's in.
Okay.
It'll go over it and it'll give you a nice little report. I would look up on the docs and explain to you further if you're not clear on that.
So is this something you could use to find the terrorists? I'm assuming that's what these are all really for.
Find the core.
The core.
Yeah, right, and you find the ringleaders of the terrorists.
I'm not
or
going to
whatever?
comment on that. I don't
Based
know.
on, based on like the
Also, you're saying you don't want to
the
find
edges
you're
are
helping.
the edges are communications and the nodes are people or something, and you can find who the main
Okay.
You can
ringleaders
use
of
them for
the.
lots of different problem sets. Yeah.
Also, imagine
Actually,
this. Imagine this. If you had like a graph of like Facebook.
Yep.
Or something like that with all the friends, you could find the core of that.
So each friend is a vertex.
Yeah.
And each
link is like a
a
relationship.
friend is like an edge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then yeah, it could find the central group of friends, right? That link
Okay.
to everyone else.
Oh, okay.
So on MySpace,
It
you have
effectively
just-
identifies.
Yeah, it's
the-
just
That
one
one's specified.
It effectively identifies the hierarchical order
Okay,
of
yeah,
a
yeah.
graph structure.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, it allows the discovery of central components. So as you
Yeah.
can see here, the red is the central component of this massive graph.
I've got a good one. So if we fed it all of our emails with respect to IBEC into the system, it would be able to pop
If
out
we made a
Rebecca
graph, if we made a graph,
as the hierarchy, because probably most of our emails
Everyone
are
else
to
go
and
to
from
Rebecca.
yeah,
you.
it really depends, whether, you need to specify the graph, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But, okay, I see what it's doing now. It's cool. But I was just more about like what you'd use it for. But now you've got some good examples. Because I meant like in terms of the competition, are they going to give you like a graph, and then you've got to work out if they might say find the core, you'll know to use core decomposition or something.
Yeah. Or there's other functions for decomposition in Graphlab,
Yeah.
but Andrew will be covering.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Alright,
Yeah, that was it.
cool.
So I've got a general question for you here. What sort of computational complexity are we talking about in these algorithms?
Graphlab overall seems very optimized. They like to boast that they're optimized, but still, we know it's CPU limited. It won't run on their GPUs a lot. It's a bit of a hard question to ask. What state of optimization?
Well, no, I'm sorry. My question really is, if I have a graph and it has V vertices and E edges in it,
Yeah.
I guess my question is, how long will it take these algorithms to run?
Yeah, big O or
Yeah,
when
big
or
O.
something.
Proportional to V and E.
I
Yeah.
don't know precisely for each. There's quite a lot of actual functions, and we don't know which one will be thrown at us. Some of them are more simplistic in nature, as you wondered, but if you get a massive graph with millions of vertices and they want you to do like PageRank on it, where you need to look at each neighbor and iteratively actually increment them and change values, that could go for quite a while.
I mean, are these NP hard problems that you're
And
trying
then,
to solve?
yeah, you also have the option to
Mhm.
run.
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. They are NP hard ones. I know K-means is a lot faster than spectral clustering, right?
Lots faster.
A lot faster,
Just
but
really accurate.
spectral clustering
clustering
is actually looks useful.
Yeah, it's a lot more useful to general data types.
Sure, it depends on the problem.
Sure.
So how
You
does
just
it, how does spectral clustering figure out that banana thing like that you were showing?
It's
Like,
based on the connectivity of points. So I
K-means
can't
is just about
explain exactly
distance,
how
right?
it goes over it all. I can explain K-means, sort of, covered that. Spectral clustering there's not a lot of. But it, I imagine it covers the, for each point in the graph, instead of just the central, where it thinks the core, the nodes, whatever you call it, cluster centers are.
Mhm.
It covers each point and then assigns a weighting based on how many are close to it. And then you can sort of group together and expand from that one and cover the ones beside it. You can eventually see, oh, this whole lot is connected together and give it a higher priority than this whole lot. It does functions with running it through a similarity matrix and all those operations.
Yeah, it makes
Pretty
sense.
much
It
like
takes a
I
lot
say.
longer now as well.
Oh, very good.
I have lots of issues.
Okay, any other questions for Daniel? Okay, I guess we're done with him.
I think everyone's asleep now. Cool.